Ayan. Hello, hello, hello. Please return to your seats now. Okay, we just have two more sessions. I will just lead the discussion on next steps, looking at the way forward for our group, and then we will do integration for the whole day by Dinky, and maybe around 30 minutes. Okay, so our task for the next 30 minutes is to listen to ideas on possible ways forward, no, for bridging leadership. I understand we're so eager to see each other and to share stories, but maybe you can do this first. Okay, Dinky says, let's all move forward. Please move forward. Bim, move for, come, come. One. I need to listen to your ideas here. Come forward. If I Okay, can I have your attention now? Listen up. Okay. Okay, ways forward. Huh? That's the title of our session, and in our FGD with some of you, a very common way forward is let's meet more often. Tama? Uh, and I think the issue really is that sometimes when we're in our work, right, we cannot share what we're doing, isn't it? We cannot share with no, the passion, no, the drive, and I think that's what happened in our BLFGDs that we conducted several times. No, that people were very eager to share. So that's one possible way forward. No, more frequent meetings to listen to each other's stories, to learn from each other's stories, but also to draw strength from each other. And Peggy, this occurred to me because in our workshop in Mexico City, remember Mark Gerzon? Because Mark and I had dinner the night before, and I knew we could communicate. So I told Mark, Mark, there's something happening here. The NGO leaders who attended the workshop, all of them had. I think we're looking for a venue to share their their hopes, their dreams, their anxieties. So Mark designed a very simple intervention. Said at 5 o'clock we'll have a voluntary session for those who want to share their journey in the mission of social change. And almost everybody came. And it's just a small circle. Then people started crying. People started crying because I think for many of them it's the first time in their lives that they shared what was happening to them in their journey for social change. Okay? For those who are from the Ateneo, they did this with veteran teachers in the school. They just did it once, sayang, with Mila Lagrosa. And the veteran teachers shared their sense of calling for their profession of teaching. And this veteran teacher started to cry because for the first time, I think they were in a group that was ready, had a willing ear to share and could empathize with their journey in their mission, a lifelong mission of education, right? So, would you agree that getting together more often, maybe not in a strictly academic framework, right, but just to share each other's stories, I think would be very, very important. Okay, so having said that, any ideas from the group on? Yes, sure. Can I have one more?
This is just an observation. Uh, I work with urban and regional planners, and we do a lot of, studies, coordination with LGUs, sectoral research, etc. And yet, at the end of the day, what happens is that the sectors come out with canned views for the sectors, rather than for the total LGU. Now, a nice thing because of my exposure to uh, BL is we've used BL in a sort of uh, easily applied way among some planners for the Metro Davao plan and for the Metro Batangas plan. And what we've come out is a framework now that we call transsectoral framework for development and security, which implies in order to get a transsectoral product, you need to bridge not only with your client, LGU, but with the customers, the public, as well as the other agencies up who need to flow down their money and investors. So at the end of the day, I think the idea of bridging leadership is becoming a curiosity among planners. I've conducted two getting to know BL for our urban planners, the licensed planners. And now our new dean at UP School of Urban Regional Planning is considering offering this as a subject, an integration subject, both at the beginning and at the end of the program, so that we do not just become the technical land use planner, whatever planner, but to be the total transsectoral human development planner.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? I see so many hands raising up. I don't know whom to call. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Moto Kunishi. I was the country director for the World based in the Philippines until a couple of years ago, and I decided to take an early retirement, retire here,
Hello.
and I'm a fellow at the AIM. Now, I'm gonna say a couple controversial things. No, let me read you the top 10 skills that the business leaders at Davos said is going to be required in 2020. These are leadership skills, right? Complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making, service orientation, negotiations, and cognitive flexibility. When you hear this, what do you think about? Exactly. Exactly. And we were talking, you were at the panel on the business, no? I asked him, would you teach this in an MBA course? He said, absolutely. You know, this came out of the development management group, right? And we experimented it in Mindanao and all that. But development management students already intuitively know that this has to be done. MBA people don't, right? And I think, we still talk about bridging leadership as something that's being developed, right? It's for kind of social sectors, or it could be for military, but I really think bridging leadership has gone way beyond that. I think we are at a point where we have an approach that should be adopted by almost anybody who's going to be in the leadership position, right? And I think it'd be nice to spend another day tomorrow thinking about, okay, how do you scale this up to the next level, right? And make it into a core teaching method and approach and leadership foundation for future leaders. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, so many people I know want to share. Yes, yes, sir. The mic is there. The mic is there.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. This is Emmanuel Garza from Mexico again. So, it's been very rich for me to get to understand a little bit more how the bridging leadership framework works here in the Philippines. I'm just wondering if you have approached bridging leadership also as a platform for collective action. So I feel it's primarily focused on building the capacities for each one of the bridging leaders to have a lasting effect in their own domains, in their own fields. But I'm wondering if there's been any bridging between the bridging leaderships across the country towards collective action needs. So I don't know if someone could share with me something in that respect.
Actually, it happened informally. Without our intervention, people in Basilan started calling up each other. And it happened very, very smoothly, right? Dedet, where are you? Dedet, in fact, in our sharing in the FGD, it happens. So we're asking ourselves, in fact, the research question for us became, should there be a critical mass first before things started to happen? In Basilan, we had the good fortune of first General Ferrer was there, handling the island, and then General Rusty Guerrero, and then General Charlie Galvez. So there was a continuity in the mindset of the military. And then Dedet has always been there. Permanent fixture, and she has her own network. And then we got other people in Basilan. And I think my intuition tells me something is going on here. So we need that kind of continuity, and we need that kind of what? Working, huh? Networking.
Okay, I think in Basilan we have also actions like what we are experiencing now, the called relative peace in Basilan, after how many years that it is been reigned by the Abu Sayyaf, is also because of the multi bridging leaders that we have in the communities. We have bridging leader who are our brigade commanders before. Now we have a bridging leader who is the vice governor of Basilan. We have a bridging leader who is the mayor of one of the municipality where the Abu Sayyaf really have their very center their camp. We have also bridging leaders who are from NGOs. We have here also one from the Child Fund. We have from the government like Ma'am Myra here. So meaning to say, in Basilan really the bridging leaders had been also a help really. As of now, we are also like me convening an activity like we are having in Mindanao, what we call the Mindanao Week of Peace. And it's really an activity for the whole week wherein all the different stakeholders from the governor, even from the ARMM to the governor of the province, the different municipal mayors and all the other sectors, security sectors, are really engaging to this one advocacy. That peace is not only solely the responsibility of the security sector, but peace is the responsibility of all stakeholders really staying in the place where we are, because that is our vision of having a peace. So I think that's one sample from the province of Basilan.
Thank you, Dede. There are implications. The implication is moving forward. If you're going to have a fellowship, might it be better to concentrate on a geographical area instead of spreading fellows right across the island? That's one. The second implication is that should we be more conscious about persistence? Um, if you're in the academy, there's also a challenge for efficiency, right? Can I do this in a shorter period of time? So before it was 2 years, then we brought it down to 1 year, and I think something is lost. Like something is lost when they move the MBA from 1 year, they're moving it down to one. There are other things going on, right? So that is another question that is focusing our attention on uh, what what is really going on as far as this phenomenon is concerned. So I think those are the two. No, the a critical mass. What does that mean? Secondly, if we have to persist, di ba? If we have to work on it, how long should that be before we begin to see real social change? Because at the end of the day, di ba, when we look at the mirror and judge ourselves, did social change happen or not? Right? It's not a question of effort and intention on our part, but did you feed the hungry? Did you shelter the homeless? Did you clothe the naked? Right? It's not what. How was your intention? Right? Where did you able to do something? So very important question, I think, that deserves more attention. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, you're right because being a BL graduate, like in a Basilan case, actually the group is very important to have the mapping of resources because we in Basilan, I work for children and youth in Basilan. Dedet is more on peace building. Maybe Miss Mara is more on technical, and so it will be very good even in a geographical grouping or clustering. It's important to really see what are the expertise so that pooling of resources in one area, hindi lang po siguro na baka magkakapareho yung mga ano na uh, yes, pooling of resources, it will be very important to see what kind of expertise does a BL member have, because if we want development, it should be a cluster of different expertise that would contribute to one development. BL, we also have one like in the security forces. So it's a matter of pulling all these resources to peace and development in Mindanao.
So the challenge is not having more graduates. The challenge is, was there social change? Was there actual social change? And sometimes, just to share with you, it's very hard to measure this, right? And so we were doing this FGD with this mayor from Tipo Tipo was sharing, and yes, sir. I will now share your story, di ba? That the indicator is that they're not just a school that graduates, because the graduates will take time, but more children are enrolling, right? You will not see from when you step back from the national agency point of view, there's still no graduates, and yet there are I don't know what you call this, temporary or intermediate indicators, right? Before you finally see the social change that will happen. So excellent story from the mayor of Tipo Tipo. Thank you, sir. Yes.
That the children who are going to school, in addition, were the children of former rebels. And I think that is the most, that, and the rebels themselves. That to me, when I heard that, is actually, that's the outcome that it's a major step towards the long-term outcome. Because now, as I was sharing with them, the dream is not to hold the gun. The dream is to hold a college education, because they went through an elementary school. So that, I think, that was to me the most powerful story I heard about Tipo Tipo, because as you all know, Tipo Tipo is one of the bases of the Abu Sayyaf.
If you have time later, try to catch Mayor. Huh? You will need maybe 15 minutes at least to listen to his story, because it's a very, very, it's not just a nice story, but it's very, very inspiring. Yes, sir. Jesse, hello.
Just to add to Mr. Moto Kinoshi and was talking with Ricky, I'm already being invited in the management training and how I can translate BL. I still cannot because there's some translation involved, but there are emerging values. Stakeholder management is one of them, but I think there are others. We were just talking, and we're very interested in participating. But I'd like to go off my topic for one, because it's something that's emerging. Aside from my role in Sea Oil Foundation, after the campaign with VP Lenny, we were compelled to stay on in a very informal way to push back on fake news and post-truth. And I was talking earlier with Doc Pip. I think it's an emerging reality that BL operators need to understand. How do we operate in this environment when it's very toxic? At first, we were trying to push back, but we also realized that pushing back will just polarize things, and it will just be, in a way, counter trolling, and you're actually making it worse. We realize that at a certain point you have to restore the middle ground where conversations, real conversations, need to be um, generated. But I think it is also BL function. How do we bring our competencies to the social media? I'm not just saying creating a Facebook page, but rather how do we translate this to be able to operate our competencies in that realm? If it's going to be an institute, I think that's something that needs to be explored.
Just to share with you, the way I do it to introduce it to the MBA in AIM when I was still there is to look at the triple bottom line and to say when you move from the profit to people and planet, then you go to stakeholder management because people and planet suddenly they are beyond your organizational authority, right? Then you have to talk to you have to do stakeholders. Then you need another type of authority, which is really leadership because you want to. So that's my way of penetrating because it's a language that they understand. The triple bottom line. Anybody else? By the way, I learned a lot from Jesse during FGDs, and I'll just have to share with you. If you're doing BL, the framework appears like this because it's on paper, right? There are three boxes. What I heard from Jesse is that the ownership continues. No? So there's an arrow ownership. You do co-ownership. There's also personal transformation, and he does that through journals. His staff has to write journals about the co-ownership and the co-creation side. So it's never ending. The other thing I learned from Jesse is that even before you go to BL, because my question was, what are the causal/conditional factors that you have to analyze before you understand that BL can be effective? And one of the things Jesse mentioned, which I thought was very insightful, was that you have to understand is if the situation is too fractured and then you may want to do other things. Because if it's too fractured, then even BL will not help. And then Colonel Bim came up with a very helpful phrase about a tactical pause. Right? Don't charge. You see first how you can put things together. And of course, one approach there is doing segments, isn't it? People willing to talk, maybe just work with them instead of getting the whole group. So we're at the stage now of looking at the version 2 of the framework. But it still takes a lot of work. Any other? Okay, none? Let me share with you then a potential way forward. And that is really, I got interested in this summit not because of the stories, but because of the fact that Dinky mentioned that there's possibility of putting up a BL center eventually. Oops. Then that's a different ball game for the Philippines at least, right? And the BL Center, I said, has to have several components. One is to have a safe space, no, for BL fellows to come together and share their stories and restore their energies, renew their commitment to their mission, or renew your mission, your commitment to your vocation, if that's your language. Right? But that kind of a safe space where people can gather together just to share stories, because there's no other way. And if you don't reinvest, don't renew, then the costs of leadership will eventually lead to burnout. And that is what has happened to many NGO leaders. There's a burnout. So there's a kind of a place where people can gather. Then Ernie was very strong on training. I said maybe not just training, but also consulting, right? Advising, mentoring. In other words, the whole issue of scaling. If we just do it here, we will have an impact only in this area. But if we have to understand how best to scale the effort and to coordinate efforts of one, with the rest of the other people. So how can we synergize? If you're already working with a government agency, let us work with another government agency so that our efforts don't overlap. So that kind of thing. Also, and I'd like to make a big push for this. So I was happy to see people interested in the research session. We should have a very serious research effort to find out what works, what doesn't work. Right? Are there better ways? Is there a framework of the transsectoral approach that we are totally missing out? Right? Have people discovered a new way of doing things as they practice this? There is no formal effort. And I'm happy to share with you that because of the efforts of Charlie and Colonel Bim and the Eastern Mindanao Commander and the new chief head of the College of CGS, huh? Command and General Staff College, they are now thinking of how can we create a research agenda for the AFP so that the various theses can finally cohere, and then we can come up with greater depth and insight instead of random topics chosen for convenience and ease of passing, which happens normally. Okay, but the fourth dimension is really advocacy. The BL Center can in fact be an institute to advocate certain things. So we're looking at the four dimensions, and then we'll see, okay, if this is what we want to do, let's see what kind of resources that we have. Okay? If we have only these resources, perhaps we have to scale down our ambitions and mainly do so much. But one of the interesting things that we've developed is, just as Dedet said, maybe it will make sense. If the BL fellowship really helps, maybe it will make better sense if we do it in certain localities. Instead of doing it here in Metro Manila, maybe we should have one fellowship program in Mindanao. Maybe two. One in Southern Mindanao, one in Western Mindanao, one in Zamboanga Peninsula. Maybe that will accelerate our desire for social change faster, isn't it? It will also reduce the cost. Because the resources will be fellows like you who will do the advising and hand-holding and providing a shoulder to cry on if the mayor is not too cooperative. Yes, so we're thinking of that as to create in situ fellowship programs. Okay, I'll have to share with you that there's a group of foundations interested in BL, and my model that I designed for them is less time in the classroom, more time on the project. Tama? If you have more time on the project, then that requires more coaches and mentors. So we will need more people who will accompany the participant to the program to their project site, right? And see how they actually operate with their stakeholders, how they organize their stakeholders. So we have a lot of these ideas that we hope to thresh out and see how can we organize and make more coherent all these dreams and aspirations, seeing that BL is actually working. How can we organize and make it more coherent so that we will have a greater impact in the lives of our countrymen during our short lives? So for those in the academe here, I hope we will continue our discussion on the research projects of Meldy, of Meredith, and who else? Of Manny, and there will be other research questions. So there are pieces of paper here, no? If perhaps you think that there are next steps that we should seriously consider, I strongly suggest that you reflect on them tonight, and maybe tomorrow, if you could. I will not ask them for you, because if you write it out now, then it does not. You will not have time to reflect, no? But maybe by tomorrow morning, if you can submit them, we will try to see if we can organize them into simpler categories and see maybe this will be a good way forward for a BL center if you can gather enough sources together. How does that sound? Di ba yan? So your homework for tonight, to close your eyes, to reflect on your experience and the movements of consolation and desolation, and to see what areas have to be strengthened. If you're interested in research, for those in the academe, right, what are the basic research questions that they should be asking for the next 5 years? So that when we offer this research agenda to various academic partners, people doing their master's and doctorate will focus on these questions. Then we will connect them to you so that the data gathering is easier. Then hopefully after 3 to 5 years, we can step back and do meta-analysis. And hopefully we'll have a theory of bridging leadership for the Philippines. A theory of bridging leadership that really results in social change. But I sincerely hope that as you're bridging leadership, that reflects the best of Filipino culture and identity. Yeah? That is one other thing that to me is an important way forward. We must root what we are doing in bridging leadership in Filipino culture and identity. To say, when you do that, that is the best of the Filipino. When we offer this to our stakeholders, we say, that is who the Filipino is. Because I think it really is true, right? When you talk to people, they're willing to help, isn't it? They care for each other naturally. Of course, not all, but there are enough of them. With that, I'd like to end my session with also a special thanks to Peggy. She started all of this. I still remember the day when I first met her in Pretoria, in South Africa. We had that lunch and a series of workshops. Okay, so thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, Titong. As you know, the Ernie and Titong were the ones who went to South Africa. That Ernie actually discussed earlier when he made his presentation on how this incubation period happened and began. And the two of them, together with several other people with Peggy, reflected and started a process of looking at how do we make bridging leadership alive. And this morning, we heard how it was made alive here in the Philippines. It started off with Manny De Vera giving the history, with AIM taking on the challenge that Ernie and actually Titong took charge of, developed the curriculum and developed the cohorts. And thanks to Mirant and Team Energy, who gave the endowment, which continued the process of training and bringing in all the cohorts who are here. From there, there was one path that was developed that focused on the health sector. And that's Zwillig Family Foundation, bringing in a very thorough and experiential way of developing the curriculum by way of starting off with mayors and defining what were the social outcomes that were needed using the framework of ownership, co-ownership, and co-creation. And in that experience, again, many of you went through that. You developed not just the practice, but you also went through building the competencies, building the measures of indicators of success, and you had the green, the yellow, and the red, which indicated whether you were moving into the change that you wanted or you are still staying in the same place where you started. And it started with the mayors, went through the bureaucracy, and after the bureaucracy, went to the governors. And it's actually looking at the end of that day, ZFF is saying that it is all about leadership. All the competencies that were developed, the measurements that were developed, all led to one thing, which is a transformative leadership that is developed over a process of working with the people, the community, interacting, very, very much like for those of us who were doing community organizing in the S70s, very much like action, reflection of the Freire tradition. Now, that was the very condensed first two parts of the morning. And then we went into the panel discussions, which was very rich, and I will not attempt to capture all of it. Let me just begin with what I have in front of me. The BL practice in the bureaucracy, I think what it said basically, resistance of civil service bureaucracy for change is what you confront. But we had 4 examples: DOST in ARM, DOH in the national, and DSWD, who in their own terms were able to navigate reforms in their own bureaucracies for change that will result into social outcomes under their mandates. It was like reform as they perform, as we say. They were undertaking reform as they were performing their function. On the initiative of research, there were two things basically that were coming out: transformative leadership and governance as a development process, and capturing health impacts through monitoring. But I think what is most important is that we have many practitioners of BL on health sector here, that you were able to demonstrate at different levels of work that the outcomes, the competencies were all developed as you were doing the implementation of BL at your different levels of work. And that the competencies really resulted into outcomes, as shown by Ernie earlier and as shared by the mayors and the governors. Because for the mayors and the governors, there were three main recurring uh, uh, mantra in a way. All of them were saying, after BL, we learned that we have to listen to the people. We have to listen to what they have to say. We have to listen to what they actually want to do, and then engage that energy, engage that with each other and with me as a leader. And that was most important, that after I listen to the people and we engage with the people, we do convergence of action between and among the people and across the different departments that they have in their own levels of governance. So that's the mayor and the governors. And finally, in the CSO, what I will just mention words that were very important in the sharing that occurred after Juan and Dedet shared: heart and mind. As BL, those two must work together. Courage and consistency. That in your work, wherever you are, especially in very challenging situations, you need to have courage and consistency. And of course, as Filipinos that we are, songs, dance, and music come. And finally, what was most important was bringing in listening and interacting with spirit guides, nature, speaking to us as we try to do the bridging of the work that has to be done with a majority of the people whom we want to have equitable outcomes in all of our efforts, and listening to nature to ensure that we do have people and what was the other one? People and not profit, planet, so that we can be sure that in all of this we can actually have the coming together of different groups, of different sectors, bridging the different divides and ideologies and beliefs into one convergent action that will lead to equitable outcomes for society. That's what everybody has said in a very short, capsulized way. And of course, I cannot end this without mentioning as a special sharing the reflections of the Chief of Staff. And the reflections of the Chief of Staff basically echoed what many of us are saying in your own experiences. That again, it has to be engaging with each other, listening with each other, and converging into collective action, because it has to be a people-oriented development. And I think with that, I would like to invite now Ricky to give the closing remarks and also what will happen tomorrow. We have had no. You have to give the closing remarks. This is now not bridging. This is what shall we call this, Titong? Where is Ernie? No. I think we've heard that we want to move forward, and since Team Energy has been a major supporter of the work of bridging leadership, I think it's proper to hear what's the moving forward to from Team Energy. But at the same time, I just would like to say this has really been a very big, major, great reunion sharing of experiences. But obviously, each one of you with your specific journey is an important lesson and narrative to hear. And that's why we want to know what are the plans of Team Energy, to be very exact.
No, thank you, Mom Dinky. Well, this was supposed to be the role of my president, but he has some urgent thing to do in the office. So he said I can say what we just discussed, and ever since we started this, almost 15 years ago, as Mirant, and as we continue this team energy, our legacy. We have a lifespan. No? We're about to end our life in 6 years because we're a build, operate, transfer organization, and we'd like to leave a legacy once we leave the face of the earth. It's kind of sad, no? I'm becoming emotional. No, but yeah, the legacy, of course, that we'd like to. The reason why we did this, our president Edgar Bautista, the first president of Miran, said, we cannot. Number one, we cannot have a poor rural area with rich cities. There has to be, from being local, it's now an international colloquium. And if you want to hear more about how it started, then baka akala nyo dito lang sa Pilipinas yan. And how BL is being implemented in globally, you have to come tomorrow and listen. We will listen now to the Synergos team. No? But again, no, I have been authorized to say that our commitment really is to leave that legacy. So as we are here, we will continue to put in resources on the propagation of the gospel of the bridging leadership. And hopefully, we now have a chief of staff. Who knows? Maybe 2 terms from now or a term from now, we will have a president. And then my mission is ended, and I can move on to another mission. Anyway, it was a wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much for supporting us. Thank you, Synergos, Mom Dinky. My team was also here, the outside team energy team, Zwilig team, and of course the team of Titong Gavino. Our team, Tere, no, Tere hasn't slept in 2 months. She hasn't been paid yet, so we have to do something about that. But none of this would have been possible if it wasn't about collaboration. No, even in the way we do it, it's all about bridging leadership. I like that. But anyway, good afternoon to everyone, and hope you enjoyed it. We have more fun tomorrow, as you will hear different stories from different countries, and we will hear it from where it really started, no, from Miss Peggy Delaney. So join us tomorrow and enjoy. You want to say something else, ma'am? 9 o'clock. I thought you were asking me to stop. 9 o'clock. See you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And the BL journey continues, at least for this activity, tomorrow. So thank you very much for coming.
See you all tomorrow at 9 o'clock sharp. We'll start.